If you're comfortable unmuting and introducing yourself, we could kind of tailor the session to your needs, especially since you're the only one here right now. But if you're not, that's okay. And if you want to type in the chat, we should be able to see it.
I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, very good. All right. And did you want me to put the screen on too?
No, that's okay. Whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay. Yeah, my wife has a meeting in the living room, which is where I usually meet. So I'm actually in my bedroom. I mean,
Okay.
so that's why I turned the screen off. I mean,
Yeah. So, where are you from, and what do you do?
I teach philosophy and the humanities. So I teach a lot of intro. I teach ethics, aesthetics, logic, and then I teach cultural history courses in the humanities.
Okay.
Intro to world religion, and then basically cultural histories courses. And we have five of those at Bucks. I teach four of them,
Oh,
and they
awesome.
move chronologically. So, it's basically the history of art, the fine arts, literature, philosophy, etc. And so, I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia. So I grew up in Atlanta in the 60s. And I've lived all over. I got my PhD at the University of California at Santa Cruz in the History of Consciousness program. And so my dissertation was on Herbert Marcuse, and I studied with probably Marcuse's most famous student, Angela Davis,
Oh,
who's
okay.
my dissertation advisor at Cal Santa Cruz. And so I taught for like 13 years full time in Florida. I taught for 3 years at Warren Wilson College in the Asheville, Swannanoa area. Taught a lot of environmental philosophy, environmental ethics there. Environmental studies is the most popular major at that college. And then I was like, at that time I was publishing and stuff, and I wasn't too worried about getting a job. And then the economy crashed. I had left a tenured position in Florida, and the Warren Wilson gig was 1 to 3 years. So for 6 months in like '08, '09 to, I was like looking for a job, and I got a 1 year teaching gig at Penn in Philly, and then while I was there, the job at Bucks opened. So I've been at Bucks full time since January of 2009.
Oh, cool. Great.
So I've been teaching, but so I jokingly call myself a tri-coastal critical theorist
Yeah,
and
no, that's
philosopher.
true.
I taught on the Gulf Coast, the West Coast, and the Atlantic Coast. I taught in the philosophy department at UCal Santa Cruz because I was already experienced professor while I was doing my PhD. So I've been lucky to be able to live in different places and teach in different places, but I'm also unfortunately a lifetime renter without any equity. So so
Pros
there's
and cons for
pros
both,
and
for
cons.
sure.
Educationally, it's been interesting.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, and we'll definitely tailor the session to you. So, Tom, feel free to take it away.
Hey, thank you, Amy. Hey, Mark. Welcome to the session. We have a lot in common. You talked about ethics, and I used to work in southeastern Pennsylvania when I worked for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and AT&T, so we share a lot in common. So we'll do this very informally. Let me just introduce myself, Mark, if I may. I'm Tom
Okay.
Hogan. I'm Tom Hogan, and I have several roles here at Penn State. I'm a professor of practice in human resource management. I'm also my School of Labor and Employment Relations, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Officer. And all of those are great, but I think probably the role that I'm proudest of and most excited about is I'm the inaugural scholar in residence at the Center for the Performing Arts at Penn State. So I have a chance
Nice.
to combine my passion with my scholarly work. So we're going to really take you on a journey today, just to share with you um, what we've done in this space. And you've met Amy. I'm going to turn it over to Amy and let her introduce herself. But we're
Yeah,
partners in crime here. So go ahead, Amy.
great. Hi, my name is Amy Kuntz. I'm an instructional designer as part of Penn State's Teaching and Learning with Technology. And I've been in that role since 2015, and prior I was at Penn State Berks in Reading, Pennsylvania, and then prior to that I was working full-time at Northampton Community College. I've been in higher ed since 2005, but I've also been an adjunct instructor for 15 years now. So I really try to incorporate lessons learned into my own teaching and vice versa, where I try to put some of this cutting edge stuff that people might not want to test and then bring it over to the instructional designer and helping faculty side of things.
Thank both of you. Thank you for the introductions.
You're welcome. So this is an interesting slide here, Mark. I just mentioned my being proud of being the inaugural scholar. So I'm a scholar practitioner. This is a picture of a production of What Problem by the Bill T. Jones Arnie Zane Dance Company. My spouse and I had the chance to be a member of the community cast. I'm in the red shirt, and Bill T. Jones, two-time Tony Award winner, and he's up for another Tony this year, is the gentleman who I have my hands on. So the point of this slide is what we're going to talk to you about is how you can use the arts and the performing arts in particular to help promote curiosity, belonging, compassion, empathy for others.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that production, so.
It's he is a superstar, Bill T. Jones, superstar, two-time Tony Award winner.
Wow.
So here's what we want to accomplish today. We really want to share with you, share our journey, hopefully stimulate your thinking, and we want to engage you in conversation as well. You know, we welcome your thoughts. We're going to keep this very informal, your reactions, your reflections to what we share. I've already mentioned my role as a scholar practitioner, and what that means is I seek to connect research and discovery with practice and delivery. Prior to coming to higher ed, I spent 23 years at AT&T with assignments in sales, sales support, business development, marketing, and then HR. So I bring that corporate background as well. Also, I've served on a variety of international commissions and boards, and this helps inform my teaching. For instance, I was on the Blue Ribbon Commission for Racial Equity for my professional association, Society for Human Resource Management. I also represented the U.S., part of the U.S. delegation for the International Organization for Standardization, Work Group 8, and we were responsible for developing and publishing a global HR standard on diversity and inclusion. So a little bit about my background and sort of the lens that I use. I come at this topic from an ESG lens, and by that I mean environmental, social, and governance. And I think you mentioned earlier that you taught sustainability, so we have another point of common interest there. Can you hear me? Okay, so I always like to give key takeaways right up front on this slide. Mark, you'll see what the key takeaways are. But just to add some context to that, what we're going to talk to you about is, I hate to call it a course, but we like to call it the VTLD experience, the Virtual Transformational Development, Leadership Development Experience. It's a virtual setting using the arts, promoting student engagement and engaged scholarship. And the whole idea is to develop the next generation of leaders to serve as agents of change in pursuit of a more civil, equitable, and just society. We've been very fortunate in that we were recognized by EdTech Digest in the 2022 awards program as a finalist in the Higher Education Technology Leader category. So we're pretty proud of that. And we were finalists in 2021 too. So a little bit of recognition there. Okay, so in terms of teaching philosophy, there's a mantra. I didn't create it, all over the internet, but this model of belonging kind of captures my teaching philosophy, Mark. Diversity is a thing, inclusion is a choice, equity is an action, and belonging is outcome. That mantra drives everything that I do. Also, when we talk about, so this whole thing is about faculty of the future. Well, the role of faculty, in my opinion, and in other scholars' opinion, is evolving. Evolving from, a friend of mine likes to put it this way, moving from being viewed, faculty, as a sage on the stage to the guide on the side. And how I translate that is becoming a curator of knowledge and of learning experiences. So hence the guide on the side. And I adopt that philosophy as well. Um, Recently, Chronicle of Higher Ed published a report, The Future of Gen Z and How COVID-19 Will Shape Students in Higher Education. We're informed by these kinds of studies and reports. What was interesting about this particular report is it said when Gen Zers, Zoomers, are looking to decide what college to attend, that what they've said, what's very important to them is well-being, inclusion, ethics, safety, social justice, diversity, and environmental responsibility. So we're guided by these in terms of teaching and the course. Okay, Amy. So, what we're going to share with you, Mark, is based on a 2-year engaged scholarship out of classroom learning research study that I was the principal investigator, and that students, undergraduate students from around Penn State, our Commonwealth campuses and University Park and World Campus, all came together over a 2-year period, collaborated, and conducted this research. They earned 3 credits for doing so, and we had several collaborative partners. The group is called MUPS, Major University Presenter Organizations, which we at the CPA at Penn State belong to. But the point is University of Nebraska, University of Texas at Austin, University of Penn, I know you said you taught at Penn, and University of Kansas. These were all collaborative partners in this 2-year engaged scholarship research that the undergraduate students serving as research assistants conducted as I led as principal investigator. Next slide, Amy, please.
So I'll take it over from there. And so I was able to come in after the research study, and we took what was found by those students of their high impact practices and really say, how does this get applied to a course? So everything that we're going to share today is going to be in a Google Doc for you to reference. And this includes a public-facing website that we have about the VTLD experiences, including those high-impact practices that we'll cover, and how we included them into the VTLD experiences and some of those findings in the course this past year, and what we're doing to change it for fall of this upcoming year. And so if you're interested in the research part that's not covered today, it's at the bottom of this slide or our website.
Okay.
So as far as the first 2 high impact practices, one was actually leveraging the arts has been proven to promote student engagement and fosters that sense of belonging. And this is not in arts courses. This can be in math courses and using 3D printing for that part. It could be in a variety of disciplines, not just maybe humanities, but in all sorts of areas. And then also witnessing the arts and interacting with the performers makes students more involved and interested in the content, and also making the connection to the institution. So we've been seeing that the research was done prior to COVID or during the first part of COVID. And so it wrapped up that in 2020, summer of 2020, and we know that with students coming back to the classroom, they're kind of coming to class and then heading on out. So how do we make the connection to our campuses and making the broader cultural aspects be more relevant? And so one question for you to think about is have you used the arts in a discipline not focused on this topic? You don't have to talk about it now, but just for something to consider. And we'll cover 2 of the examples. And so one quote that we utilize a lot is the arts enable us to put ourselves in the minds, eyes, ears, and hearts of other human beings. So when we think about diversity, equity, inclusion, this is huge. And we'll talk about diversity, equity, inclusion later on. But embodying someone else can give you new perspectives, for sure. And even just the arts in general to capture those feelings and making those connections. So our first area of using interactive arts is through images. Now we could have just put images in our learning management system, Canvas, Blackboard, etc. But we really wanted students to experience something meaningful. And so we used a free tool called Art Steps to create this interactive art gallery. And so from here, students have to explore a hallway each week. So this is the first week. But if they want to revisit different ones, they can. And this, you could look just on a laptop screen. And if you want to get closer to something, you can, and you can click on it and get more information. You could also jump around. So we have guide points for each lesson to maneuver. And so this also can be done in virtual reality, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So students can actually feel like they're in the art gallery if they so choose. The other part, and then I'll quickly put in a link to the document, is having some videos of arts experiences in addition to the live performances. So I'm not going to do this whole thing, but this video is talking about how using poetry and having how sneezing is like racism. So I'm just going to play the first little clip.
Okay.
How do you explain a sneeze to someone who's never had one? Well, it's like when your nose smells some shit and doesn't know how to handle it, so it retaliates. Or you ever get an itch in a weird place you couldn't reach?
And so you can see the audience is laughing. It captured them right away. And it's talking about a controversial topic of racism, but making it relatable. Have you ever tried to explain a sneeze? Like, it's not going to happen. So that's just one example. And so just because we have a low amount today, I'm not going to put you on the spot, Mark. But for those of you who are watching the recording, feel free to chime in here, and we'll post this in Whova. And so we have our examples of the arts and these high impact practices, and feel free to add your own.
And Amy, if I may add, interesting that I gave a talk recently at Career Services here at Penn State, the annual conference, and here's a data point that I want to share with Mark and with those folks who are watching the recording of this. 69% of the most admired companies in the world say that they prefer students who are creative and have a learning mindset, and that's valued more than actual work experience and work history. So what better way to develop creativity, curiosity, and a learning mindset than through the arts? Back to you, Amy.
Yeah. And so the art steps example gets into our high impact number 3, which is there's a need to have innovative thinking and unique tools such as virtual reality or augmented reality or artificial intelligence to accomplish positive engagement outcomes. And so when we're going to go over some examples of how we have used these tools, but think about in your own mind about how have you used these or might use these. So these are the tools that we first used, but we're switching out a few of these. So we had talked about art steps. Another one that we had used is what's called 360 video. And so I'm going to quickly play 2 little clips and then explain how it can be done.
Street Corridor, a historically African-American neighborhood in the nation's capital. From the Jim Crow laws of the early 1900s to the riots of the 1960s and development efforts of the new millennium, this city within a city has been a hub for top entertainers, social activists, and Black-owned businesses. We're going to hear stories from 3 such businesses: Ben's Chili Bowl, Industrial Bank, and Lee's Flower Shop.
And so during the video when it's playing, students, when looking on a laptop, can actually hold their mouse down and pan around and feel like they're there. We have a lot of rural students who maybe have only gone to a city on school trips, and so giving them exposures to that they wouldn't have otherwise. In addition, students can put their own phone in a device like this called the goggles, and you could pop it out, and then you could look around and feel like you're actually there. And then if we move this to in-person at many Penn State campus locations, and I think Bucks has some of these too, it's called a MetaQuest 2. So it takes that, put your phone in this kind of thing to the next level, and you put this on, and it makes you feel like you're really there, because there's an earpiece that it has like right here in your ear, and you hear the sounds like as if you're standing there. And so this is just taking us to a city, but another 360 video kind of puts us back in time and puts us in the eyes of someone sitting here at this table. So I'm just going to play a quick little clip of this one as well.
Street was listed in the Green Book, and that's why we're sitting here in Ben's Chili Bowl at 1213 U Street today. From the very day that we opened up to the current time, it's still a safe haven for people. It was always 8, 6, 8, 10 of them every evening from different walks of life in the community.
So we were able to see Ben's Chili Bowl in that other video as a historical kind of current perspective. And in this one, we were able to see what it was like back in the day in the 60s, and then what it's like from those same kind of characters in present day, which I think is very powerful. And so if you're saying this is neat, but I have no idea where to go for any of this kind of stuff, we have at Penn State, we worked with the library and created what's called the Experience Catalog. And so if you go here and then search to 360 video, there are free on the internet 360 videos for a variety of things. So if you are looking at the performing arts or humanities or social sciences, it's tagged, so you kind of pick your category and you could kind of scroll through and see some examples that are relevant to your discipline. Another one is we had an app for mindfulness, and so we don't want to show that one because it was paid, but another one that's free that uses artificial intelligence in a similar manner is called Wobot. And so I'm going to play the shortest little clip to explain what Wobot Health is for mindfulness and mental health.
Wobot's been trained in cognitive behavior therapy, an approach to mental health that is all about identifying distortions in your thinking. Wobot doesn't do therapy, but he can be your guide to help you figure out things on your own. Oh, and he's effective. Some nice people at Stanford University demonstrated that chatting to Wobot for 2 weeks led to significant improvement in mood. Every day he asks how your day is going, how you're feeling, and what you're up to. He builds an emotional model of you over time and can help you see patterns in your mood. As he learns about you, he'll teach you things, like useful strategies and practical tools that have been shown to work. You're not troubling him at all. Honestly, he has nothing else to do.
So that it builds that AI, artificial intelligence, over time, and it's personalized to your inputs, which is really interesting for sure. And so, again, if you want to chime in via chat or talk, you can. If you have any questions about virtual reality or 360 video. But if you are watching this recording, feel free to put it in this document. But Mark, feel free to chime in at any time as well.
Yeah, one thing I was wondering about, just as a humanities person who, when I was in a master's program in philosophy, a lot of my fellow graduate students were going into the AI field because it was so heavily funded. But you know, I always thought that was an intellectually interesting field, but I've always been a bit of a critic from a humanities perspective of AI. Though, and I never taught online until the pandemic. So I have over 30 years of, college and university teaching, but I'm still pretty new teaching online. I've only been doing it a little more than 2 years. So one of the things I was just kind of interested in is how you you distinguish, virtual reality and sort of cyber education or internet education on the one hand from AI or artificial intelligence on the other. Because I do think the idea of the guide by the side makes a lot of sense. Although my goal is really to help my students become sages. I'm not knocking sages. I prefer sages to AI, but I just think inherently the students all have that capacity to develop their own thinking and their own voices and become their own sages and lead their own lives. But I'm just kind of wondering definitionally, I guess as a philosopher, the distinction you're making with AI and where humans are maybe potentially losing control and turning it over to machines.
Yeah, and I think this is a kind of a cutting edge, new edge area. And so a lot of the AI is more of like the help desky answer. Like if you ask this
Right.
question, I could give this answer. And that's where this Willbot Health is if it's going in a if they answer questions in a certain way, they're going to be guided in that certain way. And so that's where a lot of the ethics come into play. Um, and so creating, I know one ultimate goal might be to have a and Tommy could elaborate more, is to have a leadership coach that does this. But we have to, if we create it, we have to be very making sure ethically that we're giving them broad perspectives, not just putting them towards how they answer and going one, to have that be more holistic. And that's where the trouble comes into play. So that's why I think we're really making sure that it comes very thoughtfully in that creation process. And then as far as virtual reality and where online education, the distinction is, so online is kind of that umbrella term, and everything could be online. But VR or 360 video could be one little element of that. So we show 360 video, which is live footage, but just taken in the whole way around. Whereas VR is like that, but it's more kind of computer generated, kind of video game-y-ish. And so if we look at this excursions, we do have some VR. Oops, sorry, wrong thing. That experience catalog. If we look at VR, that some of these include kind of fake. They look real, but they are kind of fake in some manner. So taking rising sea levels, and if we don't do anything about the environment, what is it going to look like in X amount of years? And so then they have this fictitious kind of overlay of the ocean comes up in like 20 years. How is it going to affect certain areas?
Okay.
So that's the difference between VR and online education. So VR is one little piece that could be online, but there's much more. And Mark, Tom, do you want to chime in on anything?
Yes, Mark, I'd like to, as a faculty member, sort of address your question from a different perspective. I do a lot of work with the World Economic Forum on human-centered AI. And also, we were talking about my background at AT&T. My doctorate is from the University of Maryland Global Campus. They are pioneers in the online teaching space. So the reason why I'm sharing this with you is I have evolved my thinking, and I know a lot of people, based on the class, a graduate level class that I teach called Human Resource Management in the Age of AI, that there is this concern about the role of technology, AI, machine learning, extended reality, etc., in the world of higher ed. And here's how I would answer this. As you know, there is this thing going on called digital transformation. Some refer to it as the fourth industrial revolution. Well, this is coming to higher ed. It's already hitting industry. And so I guess my point is this. The way I look at it is if we step back and rethink, reimagine the role of faculty and the role of higher ed, I'm going to say that the future is going to be some kind of combination of human beings, faculty members, for instance, and technology working together. It's not an either or, it's not a binary decision, this or that. It's going to be an and in both. And the reason for that is how do we customize the teaching and learning experience and globally scale it? Here's an example. The BTLD experience that we're talking about today is going to launch as a Gen Ed interdomain cross-listed course between the College of Liberal Arts, my home, and the College of Arts and Architecture. It is predicted that we will have between 150 and 200 students enrolled in the course. This is from all of our Commonwealth campuses, was it 23, 24, and University Park, hence the 150 to 200. How do we customize, personalize that learning experience for each student? I'm going to suggest that a faculty member by him or herself will not be able to do that. We can have one-size-fits-all type learning, or we can use technology like artificial intelligence, like machine learning, like virtual and augmented reality to customize the experience for the student. We can do it at scale, and we can make this a more personalized learning experience. We can pace the learning better by using technology. So, long-winded way of saying, Mark, that I think where we're headed with digital transformation is that we're going to evolve here in higher ed, and it's an and or both. It's not an or.
Yeah, that's interesting because the only real experience other than philosophical debates and literature that I have with AI, though this is actually a positive experience, is really just with chess and chess engines. But outside of, where obviously the AI is quite impressive, and it can speed up, learning and proficiency and mastery in a way that was really difficult earlier. I mean, if you're a chess player, you can play levels of opponents in chess now that you wouldn't have had access to, decades ago. So, I mean, but other than that, I just don't have much experience. I'm getting more experience, with the technology and a lot of the great videos that are really valuable educationally, but I just don't have much experience outside of chess with AI, except in the literature about AI and the philosophical debates about it.
Well, you know what, Mark? Here's what's interesting. Great discussion. Thank you for raising this point. What I have discovered is that we human beings are using artificial intelligence, machine learning, and we're not even aware of it.
Right.
For instance, I'm looking at my iPhone here, right? And when I use Siri, I am using artificial intelligence and machine learning. In terms of technology, I was sharing with Amy that I have all apps on my phone here where I control the air conditioning in my home, my security system, and various other things, all from my iPhone. And so my point is, you are using artificial intelligence and machine learning right now. If you're using Alexa, you're using it, and you may not even know it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use Alexa, but lately, we have had, I live in an apartment complex, and they have instituted this new heating and air, and so some of that is using they are using these types of systems. I read a really interesting story or part of it this morning, and then I was coming to the program, but it was a story about, and it may be a bit sensationalistic, but it was basically saying that there's some recent concerns with AI because AI is developing its own coded language that humans, and it's communicating, and humans are having trouble reading it and following it. And so those are some of the kind of issues, like whether technology is being used to serve us, or whether technology is getting so powerful that it's using us as servants for it. So, in other words, is technology going to be a tool to empower and emancipate human beings? or are we going to become subjects to a new coercive technological power? I mean, that's one of the kind of issues and concerns I think is interesting and important to think about with these issues.
And I would argue, Mark, you're making excellent points, and the world, the future I see and hope for is the former, where, that's why I'm involved with the World Economic Forum, human-centered AI.
Yeah.
So I guess we should keep moving because we're going to run out of time. On this slide, I sort of already made the point about customization and personalization, how we can leverage technology. And we can also use it to outreach to students of color, other students who are marginalized, LGBTQ community, others. Go ahead, Amy. Next slide. On this slide, I guess when I think about teaching, I'm thinking about context. I like the expression context matter. The only point I want to make here is that we're faced with a lot of grand challenges. The UN does a good job with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, identifying what some of those grand challenges are and associated goals. When I think about the global COVID-19 pandemic, it's already claimed a million lives, over 1 million lives in the United States and over 6.3 million lives worldwide. I think about climate change and the challenges. I think about being highly polarized, highly partisan politics that we're involved with, racial equity and social justice. These are all the issues that next gen leaders, Gen Zers, Zoomers, have to figure out how to navigate. My role and mission as a faculty member is to help equip them with tools so that they can be prepared to address these grand challenges. Okay.
Yeah, and Tom's going to give a really great example, but kind of one more anecdotally, but there's a lot of research saying that students do better if they see people who are like them, and even see not just like them, but in positions of power and kind of more authoritative authorities. And so what we really try to do is have that image representation through diverse images. So here's a picture of a trans individual who is in that leadership and kind of is in charge of the roles of her team. And so if you are of interest, sometimes it's hard to find all of these things. And so in this document, we have a whole bunch of image collections. Some are on the gender spectrum. Some are for those of disabilities. Some are those of certain races, whether it's Black or Latinx, and even just women in technology, and if we want to think holistically, even plus size individuals, and that stereotype. So one other guide that we have done is kind of who's in the class, and there's a book called What Do Inclusive Instructors Do? Dr. Tracy Addy is at Lafayette up in Easton, north of Philly, and so they've done some work in this space and trying to make those connections for that belonging. And so I'm going to pass things back to Tom to talk about how we kind of have them think about, to wrap things up, to how we get them to think more openly and to think from various perspectives. So take it away, Tom.
And so what we're trying to do with the BTLD experience in this learning space is to create an active learning opportunity for students. And what we mean by that is we want learners who are engaged in the learning process and that they're not just there passively listening. We seek to promote deep thinking by encouraging self-reflection, self-awareness, and self-knowledge. These on the slide, you see some of the teaching methods we employ to encourage deep thinking. Now, just to quickly switch to what are transformational learning experiences and how do we create them for next-gen leaders? So the way to look at this is we're trying to create learning opportunities, curate learning opportunities where individuals realize a shift in how they see themselves, their world, others, their situation. And so our research is designed to create aha moments for students. Okay. And
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that, here's a discussion question that folks can consider and take offline. and give us input on the Google Doc that Amy spoke about. Go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, and so one thing that might be useful for you, Mark, is with the arts experiences, it's very individualized. So Harvard has it's more for the general visual arts, but we apply it to a variety of things. Is what do you see, what do you think about it, and what questions do you wonder? So they have more resources there. And we have students do a self-assessment on their DEI at the beginning, and then they look at it in the middle to see how they've grown, and then they look at it again at the end, and we give them resources to help along their journey outside of the coursework if they so choose. So that is all in the document. And so I'm going to pass things over to Tom to wrap things up.
So we're going to wrap it up here. So in conclusion, we're committed to this vision on the slide. We're helping to develop next-gen leaders as agents of social justice, equity, and belonging. We really are interested in reimagining higher ed and thinking about what the classroom of the future might look like. We believe it involves personalization, customization, and we want to be curators of knowledge and of learning experiences. We do want to leverage artificial intelligence, machine learning, and immersive technologies as well. Slide, Amy. So Amy mentioned this before. If you're interested in learning more about what we're doing, this is our research study landing page, and it has all the information, reports, the interviews, etc. On the next slide here, you'll see contact information for Amy and I, and we welcome your questions, your comments, follow-up, etc. And we really appreciate you, Mark, joining us. And hopefully, folks who are watching this, we welcome connecting with you.
Well, it was nice meeting both of you, and I appreciate your presentations, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Yes, you too.
Take care.
Take care.